Um, I want to talk about delusion today, but before I do, I will, as I will always do, address what I'm wearing. I am wearing the yellow clothing of shame that the Jews were forced to wear during the Crusades. Also, the yellow star that the Jews were forced to wear during the Crusades and in the Holocaust. I do this in honor of them. May each and every one of them rise up in judgment against their persecutors. So, based upon what has just happened with President Donald Trump pointing out the obvious about declaring Jerusalem to be Israel's capital because it is obviously Israel's capital. Isn't that something? I want to go and look up the word delusion or delusional on Wikipedia. And it's characterized by holding idiosyncratic beliefs or impressions that are contradicted by reality. Okay. So when you think about that, you realize that the whole world is delusional. And quite frankly, delusion is a mental health issue. Delusion comes from practices that are of no value. So I want to look at an article on debka.com, and the title is French President Condemns Jerusalem Terror Attack While Decrying Trump's Jerusalem Decision. I mean, you can't have it both ways, buddy. You're either on one side or the other. At a news conference in Paris Sunday, after his talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, French President Emmanuel Macron condemned the Palestinian terrorist attack in Jerusalem earlier, which gravely injured an Israeli security guard, but he told Prime Minister he disapproved of President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. The truth is, he's either the one or the other. And since he's delusional, he actually condones the murder of Israelis in Jerusalem. You can't have it both ways. But to refuse to recognize and understand what is obvious, what is reality, that is delusion. Let me give you a case in point. An old man on a sleigh being pulled by, a dozen reindeer in the sky, coming out of the North Pole, sliding down a chimney. Some houses don't have a chimney, and most chimneys are 8 inches to 12 inches in diameter on the inside, which no man is able to slide down. That is a delusion. Rabbits laying colored eggs is a delusion. There are so many practices among pagan Christianity today, and quite frankly, pagan Mohammedanism, that is pure delusion. And so when you practice delusion, it is very easy to succumb to very dangerous delusions like refusing to recognize the obvious, like Jerusalem being Israel's capital, not only Israel's capital now, but Israel's capital 3,000 years ago. So let us go to the Bible and we'll look at a few scriptures concerning the word delusion. We'll go to Ecclesiastes 7 verse 25 first. I applied my heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom and the reasons of things, and to know the difference between that and the folly of foolishness and delusion. Now, in King James it says madness. As I said earlier in the video, that delusion is insanity, or I should have said is a mental health issue. Therefore, it is a form of insanity. And of course, the King James version here agrees. Madness. Holela in Hebrew. Insanity. Madness. Okay. So let's go to a few more scriptures. And remember, don't forget that practicing delusion brings delusion. It brings madness. Jeremiah 10. Let's see here. I will use a New American Standard Bible. This was back in the old days when Israel was steeped in idolatry. Verse 1, hear the word of, I'm going to say Jehovah, not the Lord. O you house of Israel, thus says Jehovah, do not learn the way of the heathen, and do not be terrified by the zodiac signs in the heavens, although the nations are terrified by them. Verse 3, because the customs of the Goyim, or the peoples, or the Gentiles, are delusion. Because it is wood cut from the forest, the work of the hands of the craftsman with a cutting tool. They decorate it with silver and gold, and they fasten it. What is that piece of wood? It is a tree. They fasten it with nails and with hammers so that it will not totter. Like a scarecrow in a cucumber field are they. So they decorate these trees with silver and gold. They cannot speak. They must be carried because they cannot walk. Don't fear them because they can't do any harm. Neither can they do any good. Delusion. All right. Now that we know that setting up a Christmas tree is delusion, I will go to King James version of it before I go off to the next passage. Jeremiah 10 verse 3, for the customs of the people are vain, are delusional. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hand of the workman with the axe, and they deck it with silver and gold. Delusion. All right. So Christianity today practices delusion. All right. I will go to, there's so many of them, but I'm afraid that I'm going to forget the whole reason why I am doing this video while I am reading this delusion and get off to another track. So I will do the 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 11, and then I'll go straight to my point. So 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 11, and for this cause shall Jehovah send them strong delusion. Why? And what is that word delusion in Greek? It says a wandering. All right, so lost my place. 11, verse 11, okay. All right. These are the people who follow after the man at the Vatican, basically what the point is here. That wicked man, the one who sits in a temple claiming that he is our Father in heaven. And he comes after the working of Satan. It says with every power, signs, and lying wonders, with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth. Truth, folks. What is the truth? Well, we found out just a few days ago, did we not? What didn't we know? Didn't we find out what the truth was? The truth was, and the whole world is aghast that somebody dared to tell the truth, is that Israel's capital is Jerusalem. And yet, the world, especially the European and the Muslim world, are in delusion. They cannot accept the truth when it's laid out right in front of them. And who do they follow? Who do the folks in Europe follow? Well, they follow that man at the Vatican. Okay. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and lying wonders, and with deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. For this cause, because of that, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved, and went after delusion instead. For this cause shall Jehovah send them strong, not just regular delusion. No. Not just the Christmas tree and the Easter bunny and all of that. Those are not strong delusions. Those are just, how do I put this? Just like it said in Jeremiah, those are weak delusions. They neither do good or do harm. They're just weak delusions. But delusion is mental instability. Delusion is mental illness. Delusion is a form of insanity, madness. So, because these people refuse the truth, he's going to send them a strong delusion that they should believe the lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Unrighteousness, injustice. Okay? And the word is also hurt. In other words, hurt. Evildoers, iniquities, wickedness, hurt, injure, murder. And who would he be talking about? He's talking about people who were given the truth but hated the truth and rejected the truth, even when the truth is right there in their face. What is that truth? That truth is that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. Today, that's what that truth is. So, Now, I have addressed the European Christians many times, but I need to address some European Christians who believe a certain nonsense, and a lot of American Christians who also believe a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous nonsense. Here's where I'm going with this. There has been a incorrect reading of Daniel 9. And this incorrect reading of Daniel 9, what it has done, it has caused people to absolutely reject
President Trump spends at least 4 hours a day watching television.
What fact, what truth did this religious belief cause people? Here's the point. In Daniel 9 describes what Titus the Roman general did in 67 AD to 70 AD. I'm going to go to that right now. In Wikipedia. All right. So, in other words, what they're saying is that Jerusalem must be destroyed. The temple must be built, and Jerusalem, how do I put this? There's going to be somebody after 3.5 years, or before 3.5 years, or whatever, before the so-called tribulation, that's going to rise up and become the Antichrist and get the Israelites to sign sort of a peace agreement with them. This is what they are saying. And it's among, unfortunately, a lot of evangelicals, which the Vice President of the United States is a part of, a Catholic evangelical. This is a dangerous delusion. Let me read to you what happened, what Titus the Roman general did. And I have told everybody that this is all over the internet. It is in your history books, and why people reject it outright as if it never happened disturbs me. I began to realize after what Donald Trump stating the obvious is that people are under a heavy delusion. All right. So after attempts by Josephus to negotiate a surrender had failed, the Romans resumed hostilities and quickly breached the first and second wall of the city. To intimidate the resistance, Titus ordered deserters from the Jewish side to be crucified around the city wall. By this time, the Jews have been exhausted by famine. This is after the siege, the long siege. So they broke into the city walls, ordered deserters from the Jewish side to be crucified around the city wall, and by this time the Jews had been exhausted by famine, and when the weak third was breached, a weak third wall was breached, bitter street fighting ensued. The Romans finally captured the Antonia fortress and began a frontal assault on the gates of the temple. So you say the temple was not destroyed. So you say the western wall is still up. Well, I got news for you. That's not true. Titus was apparently bent on ending Judaism as a religion. He sought to slaughter their animals, kill their men, rape their women, enslave their children, and kill their God. When he finally did breach the walls, his soldiers set upon everyone, man, woman, child, those who stayed loyal to Rome and those who did not. The city went up in flames. The roar of the inferno mixed with screams of agony, so as the Romans swept through the upper and lower city, literally clamoring over dead bodies in pursuit of the rebels until they reached the temple, set it aflame, and reduced it to dust. There is no part of the temple left. Daniel 9, with the exception of just a few words, is absolutely finished. What are those few words? when the desolator is made desolate. The words of Yeshua when he warned about them destroying the temple, that is finished. It is done. It's over. When the Judea is Jerusalem and Judea are completely, when they're being surrounded, he said, flee to the mountains, and those who obeyed him survived. Those who didn't did not make it. He was talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, 70 A.D. We just read that the temple was set aflame and reduced to dust. When the fires subsided, Titus gave the order to destroy the remainder of the city, seeking that no one would remember the name of Jerusalem. The temple was demolished. There was no wall left up. Fulfilling the words of Yeshua concerning the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. There is no more destruction left, folks. Jerusalem was sacked and much of the population killed or dispersed. Josephus claims that 1,100,000 people were killed during the siege, of which a majority were Jewish. 97,000 were captured and enslaved, including Simon Bar Giora and John of Yish. Many fled around to the areas around the Mediterranean. Just like I said, those who fled to begin with went all the way around the Mediterranean Sea. Titus reportedly refused and accept the wreath of victory. He claimed that he had not won the victory on his own, but he had been the vehicle through which their God had manifested his wrath against his people. So you want to say the wrath on Jerusalem never happened. You are delusional, if that's what you think. You see, folks, the 77s are finished. I proved it. Go read Daniel 9. The 62 sevens are for when Zerubbabel made the call to rebuild Jerusalem unto when Messiah the prince, not Messiah the prince, Messiah the suffering servant was cut off. The 7 sevens is from when somebody made the call to rebuild Jerusalem, 49 years, until Messiah the prince. In other words, not necessarily till Messiah the prince shows his face, but when it is time for the Messianic era. And the Messianic era starts with Jehovah's reintroducing himself to the world and making Gog, Magog, and his people an example. Yet there will be other nations, the 10 toes, that will still be delusional and still will not believe. And Messiah, the King of Jerusalem, will already be sitting on his throne when these 10 kings out of Europe are going to come and fight against him. That's what it says so in Revelation. Well, at least it says he's going to be riding on a white horse. But he will already be king in Jerusalem. And yes, he will be sitting on his throne, because when the Son of Man sits on his throne of glory, he is going to set the nations before him and separate them. The sheep on the right and the goats on the left, and you know the rest. So, what we're witnessing now, Donald Trump is saying, hey, I'm not going to go and continue in this delusion that the rest of the world is practicing concerning Jerusalem. And the rest of the world is hell-bent on embracing that delusion. If you want to know what delusion Paul was talking about in 2 Thessalonians 2, you can rest assured it's about Jerusalem.